Hello and welcome to another edition of A Lot of Help with James Lott Jr. I am James Lott Jr., your host. And we always talk about things that are very timely on this show to help you out. And there's something that is very timely, and it deals with our children and school and COVID and truancy laws and all kinds of things. Because a lot of times we go through stuff and then we have to play catch up to actually get things in place to protect things that are going on. And I'm talking to a guy who's going to actually tell us all about that. He is the attorney and manager partner of Education Justice Law Group, who specializes in ensuring both parents and students' rights are maintained throughout a child's education. Help me welcome attorney Adam Wasserman. Hi, Adam.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
to see you.
Same here. So first of all, we're talking, this is a very timely topic.
Yeah.
Very timely topic.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where now it changes every minute. There's kids, now we have kids who are back in school physically, then some aren't, some are, but also we have some parents who believe maybe they don't want their kids to be in school fully or not fully. So tell us what kind of issues are coming up or arising because of that.
A lot of issues that are arising because of that. I mean, our trailing issues are that we see a lot of children didn't get any education for a long time, and that created a chasm between what they know and what they're expected to know. And what that does is it puts an awful lot of stress on the children and the family because there's this gap that's not being addressed. And there's different manifestations of that. We're seeing social emotional manifestations of that with children not wanting to go to school, children not feeling confident with their work, children not being able to do their work. And then we see that being put back on the family and the child as if this was their fault in the making. That's the first thing that we see coming up. We have that chasm, which I think is extremely serious. Most of my practice, represents disabled children and special education children. Children by their very nature of their relationship with the school district are entitled to get extra help and support. And those help and supports weren't there for a long time. And in some cases, they're still not there. And we create these situations where people can't move forward and they're not getting the help they need and they're not being informed of what their rights are and what they're entitled to. And it puts everything into stasis.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we were put in a situation we've never been before, right? That's the first step. Something has happened. This COVID thing happens. This pandemic happens. We weren't even ready for this. What's going on? So it's one of those weird things where it's okay, something's being thrown on us. As the law community, has to actually figure out how to work this out for people's rights to be protected or things in place, right?
Well, you said the law community, but people like me shouldn't have to show up. I'm a lot of times I'm the person of last resort. People don't expect to have to bring a lawyer to school or spend their personal funds on paying a lawyer to deal with them at school. And so they're stuck in a situation they don't know how to get out of.
Yeah. I mean, and it should be where schools, I agree with you, should be able to set things up so that everything is fair. And I guess maybe flexible on some level too, kind of flexible, because again, this is something we didn't expect. We didn't expect this.
Whether it was expected or not, James, sorry for interrupting.
Please go ahead.
I don't do a lot of podcasts.
That's fine. Please tell them.
Day.
You're the expert. Please tell me. Please tell me what's going on.
Okay. Because COVID ascended upon us, the rules didn't change for educating children with disabilities. They stayed the same. The guidelines and the protocols are the same. The congressional statutes are the same. The state statutes are the same. they needed to do what they were supposed to do. And I think we all have to be human about the fact that COVID did ascend, but on the other hand, these school districts were functioning, they were receiving their funding, their staff was still their staff, and the guidelines for helping these children still remain very much in place. And I work in a very structured area of law, so we don't guess what these children get. We know specifically what they get, how often they're supposed to get it, and the nature and quality of these services. And I do think we have to be lenient in giving the districts a run-up time for when COVID ascended upon our world. But on the other hand, that run-up time wasn't a year and a half, 3 months, 2 months, and some districts did rise to the occasion, but others didn't. And we have a lot of children that sat home and did nothing for 18 months, nothing. And a lot of these children are children without adequate social skills or literacy skills, children that are depressed and anxious, which further, embroiled the parents in the process and made the parents educators, and instead of the parents being able to do their jobs and take care of the things they have to take care of.
That's true. They had a whole different role they had to play.
And then we get to the question of absences. So we come back this year, people didn't get anything, and they're like, I'm supposed to go back now?
Right.
I mean, how can I send my child back? My child's a year and a half behind. My child's going to show up and have no idea what to do, and it's going to be punitive.
Yes, that's true. And I've grandchildren, so I do know that they hated being at home. My daughters hated being at home. They had to do all these things, and you're right. There's some school districts that did very well and took care of their kids, and some didn't. I know personally a few that didn't adequately take care of their kids.
Right. Well, I don't know what very well is. I know you honor the mandate or you don't, right?
Like someone say very well is that they had great, either they set things up on Zoom, they gave, like one of my kids, they gave them all proper stuff to use at home, and I'm saying that they had better than one of my other grandkids who didn't get hardly anything. I mean, I'm just saying.
But there's this presumption that, this baseline presumption that we're going to offer Zoom and that's going to be efficacious, that people are going to be able to stay on task and learn and participate and feel comfortable. A lot of the clients that I deal with will never be comfortable with 40 people looking at them through a camera at once. And for mainstream people, it's a pretty tough thing on top of that to feel like you're in this constant stage of observation and analysis.
Yes. And so you're saying for the disabled kid community, a lot of them didn't get anything, but there were things in place before the pandemic that a lot of districts didn't follow.
Like for example, let's say we have someone in the middle of 4th grade who struggled with math and literacy, right? And struggled with being able to stay on focus or task for more than 3 to 5 minutes, right?
Okay.
They sat home. Let's say they were in one of those districts that were less than perfect.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden they come back this year and they're in middle school.
Oh, right.
And they just don't have one class. They've got 6 classes. And they've got to write everything down. And the minute they're a day late on homework, they get a 0. And they don't have a history with their teachers. And their teachers aren't sensitive to their needs. And so I think you can see the dominoes progressing about where that takes somebody.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Right. And that's common. I mean, that's a common scenario I'm describing to you. So we have lots and lots of children that were in elementary school that really relied on the specialized staff at the elementary school to take them through their day and help them get what they need. They're home for a year and a half. They didn't get what they needed. their baseline levels, their abilities did not evolve. They either stayed the same or they sunk. And now they're in middle school. And middle school is a brutal place. I don't care where you live.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Very true.
It is a
Yes.
it is a brutal place. And now I have what we call a syndrome, because not only do we have the challenges that we were dealing with before, we have new layers. And, you know, the role I play is to come in and undo those knots, hopefully as collaboratively as possible, and reset sail on a future trajectory.
Okay, so some of that's a good segue into this, because so now what are some of the knots that are happening that are coming up that you're seeing for you in terms of kids, either like parents saying my kid isn't ready to come back?
Well, a knot is we have a sixth grader reading at second grade level. Yeah. And, you know, and all of a sudden they have to read Great Expectations, right?
Oh my God, yes. That's
right.
Right.
Or, you know, we have someone who's in middle school math and they've never had the chance to master fractions or decimals or long division. Their times tables are lacking, right? Or we have the child that's on the spectrum who struggles with their social skills and, you know, doesn't realize that the environment has changed and is met in a very unwarmly hostile way by these students in the middle school who don't have the empathy or the compassion to realize that someone has different needs and a different outlook on the world, and it creates a miserable experience.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I feel that. I feel all of that. And I was horrible at math growing up, so I understand. I could imagine.
We share that. We share that.
Math is not my thing. I tell my kids and their kids, don't come to daddy. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and you don't get over being horrible at math. You just forget about it.
No, you don't. Right. I was good at English, history, all that stuff. I'm good at that. But math, I'm like, don't come to daddy. Go to mommy. She can handle you. You can handle math. I was not good at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talk about that, but no, it's a serious thing, folks. I mean, we're just laughing because of our own stuff, but it is true. I mean, it's like these kids, they're not prepared and equipped.
Well, I think we're laughing because we know how much it hurts.
You know, we do. I know.
We know how much it hurts,
yes.
and we know what it's like to feel like these challenges we're having are our fault.
Yep, we do. You're right.
Right.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Right. And who wants to show up every day for that? I mean, you know, James, I use the example. Let's say you worked at a company, right? Yep. And you went to that company and 80% of the day you sat there and you weren't able to understand or grasp onto anything that was being said to you or done, right?
Right.
What is the point of that job?
Right.
And it's the same thing at school. You know, we have kids with cognitive challenges or attentional challenges that make it impossible for them to pay attention for more than a few minutes at a time. And they sit there and it's almost like they're on a train platform and they're watching all the trains leaving on both sides, but they're not going anywhere. Right.
Yep. I can see that.
And that's, you know, and that's what I'm feeling right now an awful lot of in my work. And, you know, I handle, I think, between 60 and 80 families a year. Me personally, not the other lawyer or staff in my firm. And
wow, that's a lot. So
yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. Wow.
I'm grateful for it.
Yeah,
you know, I'm very grateful for it.
So what is in place, because you're dealing with this right now, for the parent and student? What's in place? What are we fighting for?
Well, what's in place is always what's been in place. We have two bodies of law that have kind of grown up and grown out of each other. We have the ADA and we have Section 504, and those rules provide accommodations. Pretty much, I mean, technically accommodations only. And what I mean by that is, for example, if my vision requires me to sit close to the board instead of in the back of the room, I get that, right?
Right.
Or if my attentional elasticity calls for me being prompted every 3 to 5 minutes to stay on task. Adam, are you with me? Adam, are you listening? Adam, do you have any questions? That's an accommodation, right? Copies of a teacher's notes or outlines of classwork. That's an accommodation. Accommodation just does that. Accommodation holds me up a little bit so I can cross into that territory of learning with everybody, right? That's ADA in Section 504 of the Education and Rehabilitation Act, right?
Okay.
Those rules don't target the disability and improve the baseline of the disability.
Okay.
Those accommodate, right? And they accommodate you through high school and through college, but they don't rearrange the furniture. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah,
They don't
yeah,
rearrange the furniture.
Yeah, I get it.
Right. And there's some layers here, so I'll do my best to take you through it. And then I know we want to get back to the question of attendance and
But
how.
this is good though. Let's just go people. I want people have a full, well-rounded of what's going on.
Great. And I do this work because I lived it. I mean, I grew up with pretty severe challenges. I'll have them my whole life. I have 3 paralegals that support me full time.
Okay.
I was never supposed to ride a bicycle, play a musical instrument. I don't even have a New York State's Regents diploma.
Wow.
So I get it. I mean, I get it, because I lived it and I watched my parents live it, and I watched all of us get gaslighted in the 1970s about what they needed to do and what they didn't do. And, I hate to say this, but they would have just rather tossed us aside and not done anything.
Mm-hmm.
And this is New York, where I'm from. We didn't have 40 kids in the classroom, and they had money to give us musical instruments in New York. So I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like, and I can close my eyes. And when these mom and dads talk to me about their children's day, I can see precisely what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So why am I telling you that in reference to the laws that I'm talking about? So we talked about ADA and 504, and ADA is a household name. I think most people have heard at one point or another ADA, right? And then there's the outgrowth of that, which is Section 504, which is about the accommodations to make me more comfortable, to make the learning environment more appropriate, and for them to give me aids and assistance to make access equal, right? Equal access, right? Right. Then we have IEP, right? The IEP, the hallmark standard of our special education program in the United States, which is promulgated and enacted by Congress and renewed over and over, okay?
Okay.
The goal of the IEP is not only to accommodate, but the goal of the IEP is to improve, to make better, to make more proficient, to increase the opportunities and the chances for a person to do better in school, right?
Yeah.
And an IEP has goals. Goals like Adam will learn to read at 6th grade level by the end of this year. Adam will learn to write a multi-paragraph sentence that's proper in structure, grammar, syntax, and semantics. Adam will introduce himself to 3 new children this month and make a play date with one of them and be able to engage in a meaningful conversation about common interests. Adam will be able to identify when he feels depressed.
Okay.
He'll be able to talk about his feelings. With a therapist, he'll be able to discern the cause of the depression, and he will be taught strategies to feel better. That's an IEP. And that's powerful, right? That's very powerful, right?
Yeah.
And the whole point of the IEP is to get the student to progress. And when we take children without extremely severe disabilities, the point is they get to progress grade to grade with their peers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And for the children who have severe disabilities, the standard is they get to make ambitious progress each year based on their unique circumstances, right?
Right.
So we have this 3 frameworks, right, James? We have typical children that don't get any help.
Yeah.
or typical children that need help that haven't been identified, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Right. And because the parents don't know any better, a lot of these children stay in that pool until they graduate high school and get nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the scenario where we get someone coming out of high school where they can't do math or they're reading at a first grade level. And people are like, how did this happen? Right.
Right.
That's our first pool. Right.
Yeah.
The second pool is where we recognize there is a disability on a medical basis, typically on a medical basis. And for those medical reasons, and when I say medical, I mean the information's coming from the outside. It's coming from an MD or a therapist or a speech and language therapist or a OT or a PT. And they're saying this child needs accommodations, to access the environment and access the learning, right?
Right.
And then we have that third realm, which is the IEP. And eligibility for an IEP is not determined outside of school. It's determined in school by giving a child what we call a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, where they use state-of-the-art and timely instruments to measure cognitive abilities, speech and language, visual motor abilities, that's eye-hand integration, emotional strengths and weaknesses, attentional strengths and weaknesses, gross motor strengths and weaknesses, and whether technology will adapt them, help them, and how, right? So those are kind of the three spheres, right?
Okay.
And when you take that child in the third sphere and you keep them home for a long time and give them nothing, it's not only extremely hard on them, it not only makes the current workload impossible, but it offsets their trajectory into a meaningful life, right?
Yeah.
And when I come in, we open that up and we say, how are we going to fix this? And there's a few ways to fix it.
Okay.
So, a big challenge we've had in our state. Are you in California, James?
I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in Los Angeles too. Is we had, I'd say by the end of last year, a lot of districts, LA Unified included, were getting the Zoom model right.
Yes.
Right? They figured it out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working for all children. It was working for some children, right?
Yep.
Then what happens at the end of the year? They flush it down the toilet. The Senate comes up with, the state Senate comes up with a rule that the governor signs called AB 190, where they say, makes no mention of Zoom. It only talks about independent study. So if your child needs to be home for a health-related reason that's COVID-related, they get independent study.
Okay.
And independent study didn't mention all these things that I'm talking about.
Oh,
it's a sack of materials and you go home and you do it. Okay. And the districts have been saying, well, since the law doesn't mandate us to provide special education services and interventions through AB 190, you get what you get and you don't get upset. And if you want to stay home, this is what you get.
Okay.
So, and that's how it's been this year. So yeah. It's been me showing up and working with a lot of districts and saying, that's just not going to serve my clients. What can we do better? And some of them say, we'll do better. And some of them say we won't. And the ones that we won't, we have to escalate it and take it to another forum to get it resolved. And that's a litigation-based forum.
See, now all that makes sense. Everything you just said now gets us to that point. Makes sense. So,
right.
Are there things in place to protect the students, the parents?
Well, there are, and fortunately, a lot of districts realize that when someone like me shows up, it's not a good idea to fight, and we work it out.
Okay, good.
And we work it out through a hybrid, or we work it out through sending people to the home, or we work it out for them going to school to get their services and then doing online learning. And like I said, we work it out. We don't work it out with everybody, but most of the districts in this state that I've shown up with this year, we've worked it out one way or another.
That's good. So like some of the questions. So I mean, so for parents, there is hope. You know, you can.
Yeah, but it's shameful. I mean, it's really shameful that. Why do I have to remind them what they need to do?
Well, you know, Adam, that's the world, right? I mean, sadly, that's just. I mean, I wish everybody did the right thing most of the time. But you and I both know we've been around the world long enough that don't always happen.
Right, but I think children get a free pass. I think it's, you know, I think it's different than being an adult and having a consumer issue or an issue with your doctor or lawyer. And I just think it's really important to remember this. People who work at schools serve at our behest. They are publicly funded with public money, right? And it is their job to serve us and not to elevate themselves into an ivory tower where they tell us this is how it's going to be and it's my way or the highway. And so what happens is you get a lot of mom and dads who feel like school districts are doing them a favor. And then we kind of get in this scenario where the nicer the families are to the school districts, the less they do for them because the districts feel like, well, I don't have to step it up for these people.
Well, I want to stop you right there for a second. I want to ask you this question. It's kind of, I'm really curious about this, and just as in your opinion, what you're seeing in your cases.
Right.
What level is it at? Is that the district level, right? Is that the district level? Is that the school level? Because I know a lot of teachers.
So the legal issues are with the district.
Okay.
But it's up to the team at the school to address it. And there are very good districts that this stuff doesn't happen.
Right.
And there are very good people who run school districts that aren't aware that their staff is conducting themselves this way, right?
I'm sure. Right.
Right. But there are also districts that it's just a merry-go-round. And, you know, if I show up for one student, that kid gets the gold ring and they get help and everyone else just stays on that merry-go-round without a clue.
Yeah, I just want to make that. I kind of want to make that because I know a lot of friends who are teachers.
Yeah.
Who would say it's not my problem, it's not my fault. I want to do what I can, but it's usually higher up. That's what I was wondering for you. That's what I want to know for sure for your experience.
Well, we're not so much talking about the teachers. We're talking about the special education staff, which is involved with teachers and professionals, right?
Yes.
Right. That's not what so much we're talking about. And I'm not trying to bear down on teachers here. Teachers are wonderful people. But I'm talking.
I just make sure it's clear. I just make sure it's clear for listeners who you're talking about.
Right, but we're dealing with a union, and the families that I'm talking to, they know who they are. Okay. They identify uniquely and specifically with what I'm saying.
Okay, good.
They know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, if it's not happening to you, this is just fodder.
Yeah, but
if it is happening to you, you know, the bells are going off right now.
Right.
And
I'm saying even once it's not happening to you, they should hear this stuff. I mean, like if you're a parent, you know, also part of the community, you should this is stuff they should be hearing. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm a village type guy. I feel like we all should be. It's just our problem. I think it's something that we should be. Maybe I'm too goody or whatever, but I just feel like this is our problem. It's just our whole community's problem. That we need to step up for those who need the assistance. So we not be getting what those kids need. So I think this is important. This is important for everybody to hear, I think.
Well, have you ever heard it might take a long time for a message to go around the world, but once it finally reaches its destination, it's pretty clear, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't take an awful lot to fix these situations once we get there, right? And families can spend years struggling and fighting and going back and forth on these issues. But once it's fixed, it's pretty clear and it's doable.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, like, I mean, how often do I hear a client tell me, well, my child's had depression for 4 years and it's pretty serious and the school keeps telling me there's nothing they can do about it. But when we look at a school district's obligation to children, it includes healthy social, emotional functioning in the academic environment. And if the emotional challenges are preventing the student from accessing their education and making meaningful progress, it's the school's responsibility to help with that to some degree.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh yeah.
Right. And most people don't think that their children's emotional challenges are the problem of the school. They don't know that schools need to give them counseling or mental health counseling or other types of interventions that can help with these challenges. They just don't know. So I'll get families who'll come to me, and for years they'll be paying out of pocket, and
oh, okay.
they'll say, I didn't know, Adam. And I'll say, well, I'm sorry you didn't know. And so my question is, all someone had to do was take a few extra minutes and explain things clearly.
Yeah. Because I mean, I grew up knowing we always had counselors around. I didn't really use them, but we know we had them.
Well, this is different, though. I mean, there are school counselors which are accessible to everyone, and they have like 300 kids on each of their caseloads.
Right.
We're talking about peer-reviewed methods for helping people with mental health, which again is very different. Because you're identified as someone with emotional disability, which is very different than having daily malaise, right? Right. That just because someone is sad or down doesn't mean they're entitled to mental health or weekly services.
True.
Right. That this is very different. This is when Adam feels bad about his work, in lieu of not doing anything, he'll ask for help, and he'll do some of it, and he'll feel good about it, and we'll build on that, right? This is Adam's getting Fs in all his classes, and he stayed home for the last 30 days because he says, why bother, right? That's the kind of things I'm talking about.
Okay.
And in our state, where we have anywhere between 10 to 15% of the population with special needs, be it emotional health or autism or learning disabilities or attentional deficit, it's a lot of people.
It is. It is. Yeah. I have a nephew who just got diagnosed on the spectrum, and so I've been watching my niece and them worked out with their school and school district and working that out.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of mechanics to that.
Yes.
Right?
And I'm learning stuff watching her do it, because she has one child who isn't and one child who is, and we're seeing how that works.
Divergence.
Yes, exactly. So it's so I'm learning stuff too, watching her go through it. So
right. So I mean that's it, and as time progresses, I don't know how old you are, but I remember in the late 60s and the early 70s, we saw a kid with a disability one day and they disappear the next. Or we saw kids like myself who had a high verbal aptitude, but everything else was an extreme challenge. So everyone said, well, they're walking fine and they're talking fine, so we don't have to pay any extra attention to them, right? The rapping is fine, so we don't care what's on the inside.
It was so weird because I'm in my 50s, so I remember some of this stuff. So as a kid in the 70s, I remember when I was 5 years old, I took some tests, whatever tested.
Right.
They said you're gifted. So they just ripped me out at 5, 6 years old, and put me with fourth graders. So when I was getting fourth grade level, and when they found what they said, I remember I actually came home crying every day because socially you weren't ready for that.
No, absolutely not. It's dysfunction waiting to happen. How are you supposed to? You were pushed up 2 years, and then you're expected to have evolved socially and emotionally for 2 years in that instance.
But yeah, and the thing is, it's what you're just saying. It hit me a minute, because like that was back then. It was just like we make a decision, and then that's it. Like there was no you're right. There was no nuance to it. There was no.
Right.
It didn't feel like there was major thought put into it. It just seemed like it was just like, this is what we do for people like this. So I'm assuming when you said the other direction, he sounds fine. He's talking. He's walking fine. Oh, he's fine. We'll put over here. He's fine. Like
that's right.
It basically did to both of us. It basically kind of did it in different ways. They said, "Here you go."
Yeah.
That's it. You know.
Well, I'm just meeting you for the first time, James, but I would presume there was some fallout from that move that was made for you,
Yes.
and there was a lot of realigning of your center after that happened.
Yes, there was. there was
Right.
there was for years actually to come. They kept trying to do that to me, and I was like, no, I want him back in the first grade. Let's just figure this out. But then also, I wasn't challenged because I could read so well, or I could do this already so well. So the school didn't do well for me. I'm not gonna name the school or anything, but they just didn't do well for me. And I had to figure it out.
And I mean, a lot of families come to me and they say, well, my kid's down, my kid doesn't have friends, my kid, but his grades are fine, so they're telling me they can't help me.
Right.
Which is not true.
Right.
We look at the components, and we look at social emotional functioning, we look at mental health, and we look at academics. And they're all really important. And if a kid's not having play dates or being invited over to children's house, or they're parallel playing on the playground, or they're eating lunch alone, that's a sign of something. And I don't know why that area of health is taken for granted, right? We don't need to focus too much on that, right?
Right.
But it's very, very important.
Right. Well, I feel like this last couple of years, finally attention is being paid to the mental health of the kids. Finally, we're getting talks about that now. That these kids, I mean, I felt bad for my nieces and them who didn't have a prom and didn't have a, the regular social things you and I got to have. They didn't get to, I'm like, to me, it's not frivolous. To me, it's like some of these things are rites of passage.
They are rites of
Yeah.
passage, and they are important.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think I read an article, in the New York Times some time ago, and it used the term social capital, right? Children need social capital, and they need a lot of it.
They do. They do.
And then I don't even want to start layering the maladaptive things that come out of the social media when you have a kid that's isolated, and then the torture and torment that comes from that on top of it. It really can make life very, very hard to live for a young person.
Oh yeah, even for an old person. You can do it for everybody. I mean, social media sometimes I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it's brutal.
That's your mental.
It is. I mean, could you imagine growing up and having someone say something nasty about you, and then having 10,000 people see it at the same time, and they're giving you a thumbs up? Or I wouldn't survive that.
I wouldn't either, Adam. I would survive. I'm like, thank God there was a social media.
Or finding naked pictures of your boyfriend or girlfriend on the internet, and how do you process that?
Adam, I have journals that are painful to read when I was in high school. How angsty I was in high school. That I look back at, I'm going, oh, I want to just hug James. I want to hug 16-year-old James, say it's going to be okay. I could imagine if there was social media on top of that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Couldn't imagine. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of reason why people are absent today.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
Right.
And that's something that's, but I'm saying I'm liking that people are talking about this now. And even this, we're talking about now that it's the mental state of our children, disabled, non-disabled, doesn't matter. All the children, they need some kind of pillow, some protection, something just that holds them up and supports them, because it's.
Well, let me make it clear for you and your listeners, okay?
Okay.
Every parent is allowed to know what their child's mental health baseline is. If they think their child is experiencing depression or anxiety and it's happening during the school day, all they have to do is write the school and say, I want an evaluation. I want to know what's going on. And we have this statute called Child Find, right? Which comes from the Code of Federal Regulations, which basically says if someone at a school suspects a child has a disability, they have to assess.
Okay.
Right. And it's really that easy to get it started. Sometimes schools will write back immediately and they'll give the assessment, but other times schools will write back and say, we don't see it. And when the parents get something back that says we don't see it, the parents write back, well, we do see it and you need to do this. And that's basically as far as it needs to go.
Okay, that's good to know.
Right, because then what happens is the school says no, And then you get a lot of these families scurrying to come up with $5,000-$6,000 to go out and do their own private one, which they don't need to do. Someone like LA Unified, which has a lot of great school psychologists who work for the district, are extremely well qualified to do those assessments and tell the parents what it is or how it is, and this is the baseline. And so ask for it, because that's why they're there.
I like that. They're
right?
there. Yeah, they're there.
Yeah. I had a situation where significant self-harm happening. This is recent. And thank you for liking my Facebook page.
I just did.
Okay.
I'm finding you. I'm finding you. Like, there you go. I'm liking the Facebook page. I like it.
Okay. So where was I?
Sorry.
I forgot where I was.
We're talking about just baseline and getting people, getting what's going on there. But I was like, I'm gonna find him on Facebook, see where he is, and there he is. He's on Facebook.
Have you seen my website?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up now. I'm gonna look it up next. I'm gonna look it up after we get off. I'm gonna look it up. So.
Oh, good.
Because Adam, here's the thing: is that we want to know, and you basically told us, if your child is going through something with their school district, that you can go to someone and get help and actually get assistance for your child.
Right. So, if we create a pyramid, right, and we want to look at that triggering. If the child is having a challenge accessing the academics or the social community or any other meaningful aspect of their public education, as long as, and this is what I was going to say, as long as those challenges are showing up in an educational setting, it should be the school's concern. It's very different if someone's at home and they have a horrible relationship with their mom and dad and they're throwing shoes at them and locking their room, but they don't see that at school and it's not playing out at school. Well, then it may not be the school's responsibility. But once these things start showing up in school and getting in between the student and their educational experience, it can become the school's responsibility and their obligation. And acting on it is very important. And we don't want to accept answers like, let's wait and see. That's typical for their age.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
He's strong in this area, so we really don't want to worry about this area. We always want
to how boys are, or how girls are.
That's right.
I hate that.
That's right. Exactly.
I hate that.
When a child is being severely bullied, and you report that bullying, they need to give that child a safety plan, and they need to work with you to keep that child safe. It's imperative they do that. And that's a lot of the work that we work on with the firm. Because when those issues don't get addressed and they occur day in and day out and day in and day out, we're creating something that can take an awful lot of time and expense to undo.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Adam, thank you so much for all this information. I think this is great. Like I said, I was excited to talk to you to hear about this because I think it's such a timely topic. I have a lot of parents who listen to my shows, and so I'm like, I want them to know that they have resources, they have options, they have resources, and it's not just like done deal, that's it.
Oh,
Here's
no.
your situation. Yeah.
And if they call a lawyer and a lawyer says, I'm too busy to talk to you or I want too much money, call someone else.
Yeah.
This is social justice. People have to have access to this stuff. And
yes, perfect. Adam Wasserman, part of the Education Justice Law Group. So, I think thank you for your time and for your knowledge.
Thank you, James.
I didn't know about this stuff, like I said, but it reminded me of my growing up a little bit too, going, I wish they had things like this back then for us. But they have them now. They have them now.
They do. They do. Well, it's so nice to meet you, and it's so nice to be introduced to your community and your listeners. Thank you for the time.
My pleasure. And this is A Lot of Help with James Lott Jr. Go to lottofhelp.com for more information for stuff that I do. JLJ Media is my online network. And we will see you next time on another episode of A Lot of Help.
Thanks.